What would happen if getting over it used an umbrella instead of a hammer? You could still hook onto objects with the handle and pole vault with the tip. But if you made a mistake, instead of falling all the way down, you could open your umbrella to slow your descent and even use it to cross large gaps. I decided to make this for my first ever game jam, and it was kinda by accident. I've had this idea to make an umbrella platformer for a little while, and I had a bunch of ideas for how to implement it the day before the GMTK Game Jam 2024. In the morning, I woke up and checked the theme of the jam, just in case it inspired a new idea. Built to scale. Anyway, I'm gonna go prototype this umbrella game now. I had no intention of making it a full game in 4 days. Alright, new project. Add player input. Yep, it's supposed to do that. I had a look to see what kind of starter projects existed for 2D platformers. I found a good one from Tarot Dev that used Unity's built-in physics. I tweaked some values, and although it had some promise, I figured that the mechanics I wanted to implement would be better from scratch. I also played Getting Over It for research. It was way harder than I expected to control, and I thought I could make something that controlled way better. I got the canopy to stick to the shaft, and now it rotates properly and can be extended with the press of a button. Pole vaulting is already working. Only problem was, that wasn't the best way to gain height. I wanted the umbrella to be responsive to direction changes, but that made spinning it into the ground have a lot of torque. To fix this problem, I removed the hitbox while aiming the umbrella, and then lock the angle when it's extended. I found out that you could push yourself along by jabbing the ground at an angle. Oh, that's interesting. I spent a bit of time tweaking the forces and friction. You can now toggle the canopy closed and open. It doesn't slow down your fall yet, but it does rotate slower when open. You can now move along the ground like a regular platformer. You don't have a lot of control over your movement while in the air, until you open your umbrella, and then you can move freely while slowly falling, but it doesn't matter which way the canopy is facing. After some more tweaking, the movement was starting to get fun. I added a smooth moving camera with look ahead, so I could start making a level that was more than one screen. Now it was time to make it so that you can hook onto the terrain with the handle of the umbrella. I didn't want it to be able to hook onto anything, just the ground. So I added different colliders on the floors. You can then pull yourself up onto platforms. I was happy with my progress after 3 days, and I had a realization that I could enter the game jam. After all, the umbrella is a versatile tool built to scale terrain. I'd spent the first 3 days on player movement alone. On the final day, all I had to do was design a full level, update the visuals, polish, and submit the game. So I didn't stop to record my progress much that day. I added a sunset gradient background with dark colors in the foreground. I didn't make the player fully black so you could still see the umbrella when it overlapped with other objects. Now it was time for level design. I made the first section able to be done without the hook at all. You can pole vault up these first few platforms, but you'll get stuck at this one. You can either hook or glide over it from the top. After clearing that, you need to hook to grab onto these stairs. They get higher and higher until you need to combine the pole vault with the hook. This gap can be crossed just by floating, making it to level 2. There was a lot of room left until the top, so I was a little concerned with getting a playable game done in time. But just like Getting Over It, gravity decreases as you get near the top, meaning that the platforms could get further apart. After some more pole vaulting into hooking, this time with consequences for falling, you need to pole vault into a float to make this gap. Finally, on level 3, you need to combine all 3 options. Gravity is so low here that you can swing with the hook to skip some platforms. Eventually, you reach a point where gravity reverses and you get pulled towards the moon, made obvious by this grey rectangle. Since the goal was to get to the moon, I named the game Moonbrella. I also designed the left side to be a more difficult but quicker path for those that are already familiar with the movement. Now it was time for finishing touches. There was a problem with the umbrella getting wedged between platforms, so instead of fixing the underlying issue, I just made the platforms overlap a little. Also, I finally made it so the umbrella had to be aimed up in order to float. After refining the level design and movement, it was done. I submitted just before my regular bedtime, so I had entered a game jam without losing sleep, without missing obligations, and taking regular breaks. I'd been deterred by game jams in the past because they're usually either too short, where crunching is necessary, or too long of a commitment. I think 4 days was the perfect length. I gave it to some people to playtest, and boy was I humbled. The controls were not intuitive. I set out to make a game that controls better than getting over it, but ironically made a game that was just as difficult. The main point of contention was the mouse aiming. I copied it over from my other game, Some Orbit. It works there by simulating a joystick. Your moon basically acts like a cursor, and it makes it easy to swing planets around after you grab them. But in Moonbrella, you could see your actual cursor, and if there's a cursor, people expect the object to aim at where the cursor is. So the majority of the feedback I got was, I can't get the umbrella to aim where I want it to. So I fixed the mouse aiming that day, but I was locked out of updating the game for 6 days while the ratings happened. It ended up scoring just under 3 stars overall, which was in the top 50% of games. Not bad for having dysfunctional controls. After voting was over, I patched the mouse aiming, and apparently it made it much easier. And this was the first time I'd seen somebody reach the moon. If you want to give it a try, the link is in the description. Let me know if you're able to beat it. It only takes a few minutes if you know what you're doing. I still have lots of ideas to extend the game, so this might not be the last you see of this idea.